Hello, property people.
Morning, property people.
As usual, Suzanna, please wait for the appropriate moment.
All right, Whaley. Can I talk about Do It For Dumb yet?
You can look. Please wait. I've got to. This is done the right way. This is so unprofessional. David, good morning, David. How are you? You okay, David?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well. Was a little bit gutted that Suzanna couldn't make it today. But look, she surprised me and turned up.
Oh, it's a good job she's recovered today. This is fantastic because she's not been well, has she? So we were meant to be talking about all the delights of Akaboom, and we were going to be talking about Do It For Dom. But then she's been taken down, hasn't she? She's gone yesterday. She fell at the final hurdle.
I thought it was the clap. Right, and now is your opportunity to ask Suzanna anything you've wanted to. I know she's usually not compliant in an interview scenario.
No, she doesn't really. I was going to say keep her mouth shut quiet there, but that women in the estate agency would be all over that if they aren't already with us, taking one of their thought leaders on the supplier side of things. So, Suzanna, is it true that you are a pale imitation of everything that is Simon Whale, and really you've been trying to copy me now for the best part of 10, 15 years? Would you say that's correct?
Simon, when I gave you the idea to do a really shit version of Repeat called Jet, that was all mine.
Good. Well, I'm glad we got that out in the open there. Anyway,
honestly, for those of you Repeat shares gone as well.
Well, yeah, thanks for that. I think one of the main things that I take from this is, as you know, she is so helpful with Do It For Dom. I mean, I genuinely couldn't do the whole Do It For Dom thing without Suzanna, but this is yet again a sign of her flakiness and why I have to, be the boy in the dike. But again, that's taking. We're going to come to banter and things we can't say later, and fingers in the dike are not things we can discuss.
Anyway, I've got a few questions for you.
Go on, hit me.
I saw you feeding crocodiles over the weekend. Yeah. And I assumed that you were just in Miles Shipside's lair. Is that true?
What, you mean my mentor?
Yeah, your mentor.
No, he doesn't legally allow me to say that, neither does Raj from Fixflow, but they are both my mentors, no matter what their lawyers say. Yeah, it was glorious. It was, if you haven't been down there, I think it's called World of Crocodiles, or as we call it, Prop Tech. See what I did there? They mistakenly thought that the Feed the Crocodiles experience was just for children. Wow, did I put them wrong? It was glorious.
Was it a good time?
It's nice. It's nice.
What do crocodiles eat?
Quail was what I was feeding them.
What, quail?
Quail. Well, it's in the Cotswolds, so it's very middle class crocodiles.
I imagine that's what they eat in the wild, out in the swamps of Florida. Lots of quail.
I can see a couple of the comments here, and you know that we've got that weird thing where we never really know who the person is. But if they were doing that, Millionaire Show, the questions, I could say without a shadow of doubt that that's a Mr. Graham Wilson there. So that's really, really good. So yet again,
can we just all agree that Graham Wilson is the unsung hero of Do It For Dom?
Well, if you ever had the balls, cojones, whatever you like to call, to actually come on board, how many times have we asked him on?
He's not a man of the public. He's not a man of the people.
Look,
I think he's learned really well from that interview that Emily Maitlis did with Prince Andrew. That not always is it going to go the way that you want it.
We'd take him to the cleaners, to be fair, and that's without going near his private life. Anyway, we're back for a new series. It's going really well. So this is all about Akaboom. So get Suzanna back. By the way, well done on spending last week making that dummy.
My daughter did that last night. I gave her a picture of Suzanna and I said, I need you to make that look like Suzanna Mavity, and she did.
Right, okay, we'll get her working now. How long have we got till Property Mart 1? We need 1,000 of those for our merch for the stand.
Oh, I want an Nathan Emerson one.
It could have an afro, like a ginger afro.
A good ginger afro, its eyes just very close together. Oh, it'd be brilliant.
Well, that's okay. So you've done a repeat, you've done right move, you've just taken off Property Mark. Let's really unite the industry, shall we?
Let's lay into somebody else. No, look, it's all light-hearted banter, isn't it? Everything's allowed with light-hearted banter, and I'm giving you a seamless segue there.
You honestly, sometimes you just come back at me and impress me. And I was, this was looking at last week's news. I didn't think I was going to be that impressed with an article about HR and everything. Have you got it up there? Could you read us out a bit of it if you've got it to hand? Because there was a bit of it that I thought was quite interesting. So this was in the Negotiator this week, wasn't it? And it was from a gentleman called Chris Dealey of JMW Solicitors. And the headline was, "Don't let branch banter get you into tribunal trouble."
I'll read you a little bit of it.
You've got a lovely chocolatey voice, so if you wouldn't mind doing that.
JMW's Chris Dealey says that while workplace banter among estate agents may seem good-natured and harmless, ribbing between mates, it can land employees in hot water. And I guess what he's warning about is general banter that sort of might even sort of veer into what he calls horseplay. I'm just trying to find a good example out of what...
Did you see the important bits bit? He says there's a couple of important bits. There's a long definition. The first is that an act constituting harassment does not need to be intentionally offensive. And I think we're all reaching for our WhatsApp groups at this moment. The legal definition looks at behavior that has the effect of offending or humiliating someone, even if it does not have the purpose of doing so. And then it goes on a little bit further. It says the other major point to consider is the target of an act of harassment does not need to be the same as the person who brings a claim. So employers may be liable towards workers who overhear comments that were intended to be private between others or jokes were not made about any person in particular. I mean, this is game-changing. I mean, basically everything we do could be considered banter.
Well, later on he goes on to say, from an HR standpoint, the issue with banter is not about it being edgy or non-PC. Yeah. It is that it can be exclusionary. So what we're saying is you need everyone's fair game. That's what he's saying. As long as you insult everyone in your workplace, you're going to be all right.
To be fair, that has been the monarchy you've lived your life by, hasn't it? Really, it's just the Bernard Manning. I'm not racist. I just hate everyone.
Well, if we sort of just move on from that story, because you could dismiss what Purple Bricks did on April Fool's Day as light-hearted banter, but let's face it, no one really took it as light-hearted banter. There were a lot of angry people out there.
I did, I mean, on the face of it, I mean, bloody hell, how cheesy are April Fool's jokes anyways, apart from the ones we do, which are brilliant. I mean, they can't say anything without getting grief anyway, but wasn't it a bit snowflakey the way that everyone responded?
I think you have to realise that even after all these years, that Purple... Yeah. The damage done by the original Purple Bricks brothers means that it's still really raw for some agents, and they never ever forgive or forget it.
And that, booming was not the end of it, was it? It's if you talk about sort of radioactivity having half-lives of thousands of years, it's going to take an eternity, if ever, for some people to let that go. And I suppose what I would say is, do you think they really care about winding up the rest of the industry? I mean, I've always talked about, I have a lot of time for Adam Day, obviously, who's obviously was at what's the online agency? Was it Hatched? I can't remember now. Was it the one that the Connells bought in the end? But he's obviously at EXP now, making waves there. But he never went for that approach of having a pop at people, did he? Having a go at the industry. There were no funeral processions as there were with other...
I don't think anyone has put as much money into trying to sort of cast doubt in the eyes of the public, in the mind of the public, as to what role agents play, and to really sort of dilute and degrade what the services that we offer as, unfortunately, the first iteration of the Bruce Brothers vehicle. And it doesn't matter how many boomings, it doesn't matter how many agents together as you launches or whatever it may be. People want in the industry, don't forget that. And I think it was so damaging because I think why people get so insulted by it's not. I think everyone can take a direct pop at them. But when you're spending that money and that energy getting it over to the members of the public, that damage is irreversible because you're educating the public.
And don't you think that's self-defeating? I mean, there's not many of those things that they could claim that couldn't also be thrown back at themselves. You know, it seems self-defeating to me a little bit that you...
Well, I think that's the irony of the post is that I think the efficacy of the service provided by the aforementioned purple building material company has been well documented, and all the major sort of errors that they had with their lettings department, etc. It doesn't exactly cry professionalism, does it? So I think in order to throw those stones, I think you need to be confident that the service that you offer is top notch.
Who can get away with that, either in our industry or in any? Is there anyone that does? I mean, Steve Jobs used to do a really good job, didn't he? Of kind of when he did the launches for the iPhones ever. At the start, he would always take a little bit of a pop at a Microsoft or Samsung or something like that, and he'd get away with it. But it was quite light-hearted. Is there anyone in the estate agency industry or outside that you think does that stuff well, or is it just too close to the bone for most businesses to get away from?
God, do you know what? Actually, thinking about this, I don't think there's that many within the industry who are daring enough, except for perhaps you and I, to have a pop or even a friendly pop at other people. I don't think we do satire particularly well in our industry. I really don't think we do.
It's poorer for it, though. I mean, I know we're completely biased because we're a little bit batshit, but I think the thing is it does resonate. It does resonate quite well if done well, doesn't it?
I think there's still a place for it. I think there's a place for it. I think it sort of reveals the truth. It can be a bit cutting sometimes, but we're here to learn from it. I think we all need to learn from it. I think we should be building a better environment
in the wider world as well. I mean, regardless of it is going to the extreme, but Trump, for all his lunacy, is absolutely effective in that negative messaging, isn't he? I mean, he just hammers it, and clearly, well, I was going to say there's a minority of people at the polls at the moment. It's not the 30% that we were led to believe. It's over 50% in many areas, obviously, that are saying that message. And I think it's quite interesting actually seeing Biden's kind of changed his tack, because he's trying to go, we're going to be better than you and we're not going to rise to it. He's actually having a few pop shots back, because I think he's just realized that if you let somebody like Trump or somebody like this campaign go unresponded to, you don't appear actually as you're being magnanimous and noble in your mind. But I don't know if the public do.
I think sometimes the messaging from those politicians, and I'd love to think it's just the American ones, but it gets so banal and it gets so ridiculous that you think no one's going to take them seriously. But in effect, I think the more ridiculous it gets, the more traction they get. And I remind all of you of very, very simple slogans that go on the side of buses is what really swayed the public here in this country.
And the more times you say it, the more time it becomes fact, and all that kind of stuff, isn't it? So it's not very edifying, and it's not very optimistic, is it? Because actually, that you can see that negativity spewing out into that, and that's why we've got this polarization on it, in whether it's in our own particular industry or in the wider. Look at that segue into just everyday challenges.
We've got some comments here that we should go through. So we've got obviously Christian. Good morning, Chief. I think what hurts a lot of agents is how easy it was for Purple Bricks to do this, and their original marketing was clever because it leveraged weak public assumptions about estate agents in the first place. And then some kindly soul on LinkedIn has stated that they did help to set up agents together, though, and they did. And I think it's a great organization. It does some fantastic work. And I think it's very necessary. And I'm glad that they did that. However, I would argue that it doesn't excuse the damage that they did to the industry prior to that.
Yeah, what's Christian come back with that last bit there? They're bullshit.
BS
Is
even tougher. Yeah. Well, it's all hanging on the reputation of estate agents and that whole veracity index piece that we keep talking about again and again. Because
have you got Mike Day's thing? I thought that was quite an interesting one in Property Industry Eye this week. Just talking about he was talking about how AI responds and how and talking about. I think he actually asked AI why are agents mistrusted.
So the Property Industry Eye, on the back of what Mike Day had done, decided to ask Bing's Copilot AI to answer the provocative question, why do people hate estate agents? And they go on to say that the result in the main was predictable, but if you recognize that the tech is distilling its response from a vast array to arrive at that conclusion, there is some justification in saying that as an industry, we should be paying close attention to these identified trigger issues. So we'll go through them. Trust issues. Trust is a delicate commodity, and estate agents often find themselves in a precarious balance. A survey revealed that just 1% of UK adults consider estate agents trustworthy, and they rank lower than lawyers and even traffic wardens. The sentiment isn't unfounded. Many agents admit that some of their peers indeed deserve the stereotype. On that point, it's true. Sometimes I feel like we do the most damage to ourselves by talking about. You only need to go into those Facebook groups to see the sort of sniping that goes on between agents, and we're very quick to call out agents that we think are. I've done it. I mean, I've done it.
How do you not reinforce that stereotype without calling out wrongdoing when you see it? It's very hard, isn't it?
I don't know. I don't know. I suppose it's the same sort of thing that stops doctors from reporting other doctors who they think might be have a higher than normal mortality rate going on in their operating theatres, because you don't want to bring your profession into disrepute.
But that has to be that whistleblower effect. I think what it shows here as well is, look, Google was already doing a job before in terms of collating all those common misconceptions or real perceptions. But AI, if you think about what Mike's done, I think quite cleverly here, is you're typing it into a ChatGPT or whatever the AI tool is you're doing. All the AI is going to do is going to reinforce those commonly held beliefs, aren't they? And
well, let's just have a look at what the other four commonly held beliefs are, according to AI. So this was interesting to me. Communication woes, that people are waiting for updates, but the lines remain silent. Delays and lack of communication, and that's feedback that AI is gathering from online sources. So it's mirroring, if you like, what is being said by members of the public out there, which is interesting, because we always talk about agents, or I think Peter Knight did a big piece on this, agents who ignore the number of agents who actually ignore the leads that are coming into them. And don't respond to them quick enough. So it's clear that's.
I think communication is such an interesting one. And I know we're bouncing around here between the view of agents and AI, but as I highlighted in one of my brilliant many speeches, obviously ChatGPT and a lot of the data, the AI sources are only taking their data from a point in time. It's certainly not 100% up to date, as was demonstrated when I asked ChatGPT how good was Liz Truss as a prime minister, and it said that Liz Truss was yet to be prime minister as far as it was aware. Now,
I think that was a highly accurate statement.
Yeah. No, to be fair to AI, and it's clever, maybe it missed it.
Lincoln, you missed. What else were they complaining about? Shady valuation tactics. So what they call the mystical art of property valuation. Sometimes it feels like estate agents consult a crystal ball, and shady valuation practices irk both buyers and sellers. Do you know what? I've never really sort of heard much out there in the marketplace about from consumers, if you like, about shady valuation tactics. But the one thing that I sometimes do hear, and this is a story that I think is mostly perpetuated by buyers, and disgruntled buyers who find it hard to get on the ladder, who find the ever increasing sort of unaffordability of houses to be an issue. I've heard it.
Charlie's crew.
Charlie's crew. But there is a narrative out there that agents are complicit, if you like, in raising prices, because what they're doing is they're encouraging vendors, sellers, whatever you like to call them, to increase the prices of their houses or to be more ambitious than they may be otherwise, which is interesting.
It is. What's fascinating here, though, again, tying it back to the wider world, is we're just into the world of conspiracy theories again, aren't we, really, in terms of the shadowy group that are working in the background to ensure that this has happened. I mean, where's the look in the mirror, though, when they're using online valuation tools and taking them verbatim?
Yeah.
That's like,
I think we all want quicker information, but I'd argue that the best valuers out there, and this is something that actually Suzanna would have something to say about. I think Akaboom customers will be sending their clients an appraisal afterwards that's all automated, but more importantly, uses empirical evidence. It's going to use it's going to use all the comparables to prove what you are saying to the client is correct. And I think that a lot of agents do use some of those best tools out there. But the other things that have been leveled at agents in that article was profit motivation and aggressive sales tactics. They said there's that image out there that estate agents are driven by profit and can appear relentless and ruthless. And then there's the blame game.
I mean, some of the corporates are regularly again called out for that kind of inducing, enforcing, blackmailing people to see the mortgage advisor, don't they, before they feel they're going to get the full service?
Yeah, well, correct. That was a long established corporate trick, if you like. Blame game is another thing they talk about. When deals crumble or expectations aren't met, guess who's in the spotlight? The estate agents. They're convenient scapegoats when things go awry. And perhaps it's because they're the visible players in an intricate dance of contacts and keys. Do you know what? For AI, that is really, really, that's a lovely sentiment, because the solicitors will never get blamed for a transaction falling through, although very often there can be frustrations because of their communication issues or their service or whatever it is that they've done to play into the transaction. So I think you're right. There is that sense that whatever happens, the estate agents are the persecuted minority that always end up becoming the scapegoats of history.
Yeah. Look, I mean, we're fortunate enough now. What we got on View Agents, over 1 million. I think it's just over 1 million now, 1 million reviews from all the different platforms. And what's fascinating is you go through many of those, especially on the letting side of things, isn't it? That where they're blaming the landlord rather than the agent, and that's all being thrown into the mix when giving that agent a negative bit of feedback, which is really, really unfair if you think about it.
So I decided that what I was going to do is to give Pi and the rest of the press a dose of their own medicine. So I asked AI what it is about our property industry press that people might not like. And
there, though, by the way, so I got obsessed about having our own open AI source, and as you know, I registered Chat Bollocks. Because I do think this is Mince's Chat Bollocks, okay? This is Mince's Chat Bollocks. So number one, biased reporting. Some news sources, this isn't from me, by the way, this is just the AI talking. Some news sources may prioritize sensationalism or advertiser interest over providing objective and balanced coverage of the industry, which I think, on the whole, it's a comment that we've heard before. It can be a little bit press releasey sometimes, and God knows we've abused that more than others. We love a good press release, don't we? Of course we do, yeah.
Lack of credibility. So news outlets that consistently publish inaccurate, misleading information erode the trust amongst their own audience and lead to negative.
That's a bit over. That's probably generic, isn't it? I don't think that's.
I think that's generic about press in general, isn't it? And I think actually the press have become very much legally aware and they cover their own backs even more than an average surveyor does these days. So conflicts of interest. Certain news sources may have ties to specific estate agencies or suppliers or developers that raise concerns about their impartiality, journalistic integrity. So we do know some of our industry press is owned and backed by and run by people who are suppliers and do have a vested interest. So that's an interesting comment that, again, a computer has come up with as opposed to a human. And I think this is the bit where I miss Ros Renshaw the most. Lack of investigative reporting. I used to love a good old Ros Renshaw murder mystery tale because she really got into the nub of it, and she was the best that I've seen.
Do you think it's just? I always question this. Do you think we're just too small an industry to sustain that investigative journalism? From a resource point of view, or do you think that it's just having the right sort of person like a Ros Renshaw out there to do it?
I think that this comment here, the sexist headlines, perhaps. What's interesting is that I've always commented this: if we had more women working in the press, giving their genuine points of view or their perspective, then I don't think our press would seem as one-sided as sometimes it does. And I do think there is a lack of people like Ros. Whether or not it can sustain it, I think that all press outlets, and this goes for all the commercialized press as well, there isn't that sort of sense that anybody's really doing the hard work in trying to find the stories. That's why we like sensationalist headlines, because they basically write themselves. The news writes themselves. It's lazy journalism for all intents and purposes. We don't need to go looking for outrage because it's kind of that Daily Mail stuff that tends to be there.
And again, all of the old media, as Elon Musk would call it, they are suffering from a lack of journalistic resource and stories themselves, aren't they? They're just regurgitating a lot of the stuff.
And it's not like we can't make it easier for them. So Megan's commented here that she offered a host of guest spot women, but let's not forget that great publication that was put together by Harry Truman, which has 80 women who can talk on any different subject you want, or a variety of them, as well as, if not better, than their male counterparts.
Well, I think, to be honest, though, I think that's not going far enough. So in our CRM software, as you know, I've changed all of the people from Mr. and Mrs. to them there. So we can't tell who's a woman or man or another anymore. And I think that shows that, once again, Kerfuffle is at the forefront.
I agree. I think women's rights are very important, Simon.
And that's totally relevant, because have you seen the size of Suzanna's hands?
Enough about Suzanna's hands. But I think that we don't do enough there to sort of tip that balance. So, but they're silly, because they could do it very easily. But I think they are worried about falling into that tokenism trap. Sometimes or kowtowing to it. So we saw all that fuss around sort of the post negs and all of that sort of stuff that went on. Seems to have died down. We then have sort of Women in the State Agency Conference, which I don't think we've actually discussed, but I think it was, obviously superb and a very, very different.
Your bit was amazing, David. Your bit was incredible.
Simon, it's nothing to do with me. I just act as a mirror to the stories of the people that I talk to. Okay. There's very important issues, man.
I tell you what, it was all of the conferences again this start of the year all hit within about a week or two, didn't they? Guild had it, was it You Move, Belvoir, and all some of the others. So that I mean, first of all, the venue was fantastic at the Women Estate Agency one. Speakers absolutely knocked them out the park again. I thought that was great, and I just like the fact that yet again it just seemed to be sort of growing up in terms of just in terms of the whole thought education side of things. It had all the emotional things you'd expect from obviously when they were hitting some really, really. I mean, your whole segment, wasn't it, when you were listening to people like SJ and everyone else talking about it, was tough listening at times.
It is tough listening, and I think that whole day is about tough listening. It's about hearing things as a man that instantly sort of make you very defensive and make you want to go, no, I'm not like that. But actually, if you look at yourself properly, there are times where we all take a step in that direction. There was some inspiration there as well. There's some
and a beatboxer and a
and the beatboxer. That it was a great day out. And what I like about the almost the atmosphere and the environment, actually the style of the conference, the fact that it's almost like in an auditorium like setting is there's no messing about. You're there to sort of to learn, as they put it, but you're there to sort of absorb it. And I think that the focus is on everything that goes on stage. I'm not sure that.
And the after party.
And hey, there ain't no party like a women in a state agency after party up on the roof. Did you see the view?
No, I didn't get out there. I didn't. I always have that. I always have that kind of urge to jump when I get near the edge of things, so I try not to. You know, like with my business plans, I tend to do that with business as well.
Graham Wilson, good morning, Mr. Wilson, the unsung hero of Do It for Dom, and Suzanna Mavity. Oh, Graham, but just the best of the world, mate.
And Graham is absolutely as the sleeping partner. Which is why I think Mams is ill. We obviously need to. They are still. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. I mean, Mams is going to come back on there, but do go to the Do It for Dom page on Facebook. Reach out to Susanna, Graham, myself, any of the team there, and it's going to be literally legendary. It's probably the easiest as well this time. Is that you and I are very happy, David, in terms of. Some of the past ones have been really quite hard physical challenges. This one's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of laugh.
Everybody keeps saying that, but I've got a feeling it's still going to end in exhaustion at the end of the day. But there are some fun stuff planned for afterwards, and it's always a great day out. But really, the cadre of agents, industry personalities that have joined this fantastic event is huge. I mean, it's a who's who of everybody, but you don't have to be anybody to join and to raise money for charity. So get on it.
Any suppliers that want to get involved, we're looking for obviously auction prizes, things like that, all the normal there. So please get in touch, and we'd love to talk to you about those opportunities, because I genuinely, if you were being really cynical, David, of which of course we are brilliantly, if you were treating this as a business networking event, there is nothing close to it, is there, in terms of the people that come along to this? This is about.
It is amazing. Somebody said to me that they found themselves sort of walking up I'm going to name drop again, but it's the same two names that I always drop. But they're walking up a hill with Miles Shipside and Peter Knight. But it's a lovely, relaxed environment for you to be able to just
I can never keep up with them is the problem. You know, we've got that short legs issue, haven't we? In terms of which is a big problem. So. Yeah, look, really, really good.
Let's just, if you don't mind, let's just backtrack a little bit. We're going to go through some of the comments that we've had, because this show is nothing if not a reflection of what our audience feel and think. So it's not.
That's all it is. Let's be honest.
It's just here we go. Let's not forget that the consumer has to take some responsibility for the agent that they choose. If you choose your agent based on boards, market share, awards, as opposed to the ethos and team, then the consumer has to take accountability. There's something about that, but again, we as agents are guilty of pushing those points. So we will talk about market share. We will talk about awards. We don't necessarily scream all the time about our ethos and team. So I think that if we switch that on its head.
Yeah, but do you know what I love about that? Because I was going to get old prissy and defensive there. What that doesn't highlight in those ones, it's targeting boards, market share, awards, which I agree can sometimes be a bit me too. What it's not highlighting there is the reviews and word of mouth aspect, which reinforces reinforces what you are as an agent, isn't it? So that's what needs to come across is, yes, we have the ability to have the best market share, to have the boards. We're good enough to win, to get the boards, to win these awards. But that's backed up by the fact that we clearly look after our clients.
I would go further and say that I think without using client testimonials properly to prove, as that ultimate social proof, to prove the service that you say you're capable of providing, nobody should believe you. Morning, by the way. Right, Megan's also said, but just look at the agents within our industry network we socialise in. It isn't the rogue or crappy agents. That's because we're very careful about who we socialise with. But our little bubble doesn't touch the surface of the whole industry, and it's true. So I think probably a different way of looking at that is that we within the industry and the people that you bump into at conferences, let's face it, it's a little bit samey, but and the reason for that is it's the top sort of 25% of the industry who care about all of these things, and there's a load of agents that don't.
Do you know what you need there? You need like a group, and it should do what it says on the tin. So let's call it like property or something, and then it should make its mark. So let's call it Property Mark, and that could appeal to everybody within the industry, and then you break out that little bubble,
like the people's agent. Here we go. Christian, if as a profession we fail to engage with 50% of leads, it's clear that we are failing at so many other untrackable elements of what we do. We wonder why we are viewed this way, but we all know in reality.
That's not very uplifting, is it, Christian?
No, it's not. We always see agents overvaluing, yet we have a responsibility to highlight this to the consumer and understand what these agents have online currently and how that compares to their valuation. So I think people are talking about ratios of sold to unsold properties, how long they sit on the market, are they reduced before they arrive at a sale? Those stats are seen as being relevant.
Talk to you there. Robert May does a load of stuff on overvaluing. So Christian, reach out to Robert and
I think there's a lot that Christian could probably learn from someone like Robert. We've all seen the stories of the woes of clients suffering from overvaluing. I'd love to know how many of those clients chose that agent because of that value over other agents' accurate and substantiated value. We will never know. This goes back into that whole piece about the actual consumer taking responsibility. Never underestimate the power of greed. That people always and also that whole, you know how like you consider your kid, well, a normal parent would consider their kid to be the best kid in the world, and no one else's kid is.
No, I'm quite objective. I rank him like with the reviews, so he's 17th down our street at the moment.
George, you've slipped to number 11 this week. Shame on you. But most parents think that their kid is the most beautiful, the most talented, the cutest, and so on, and that's because it's a reflection of us, isn't it? It's we created that kid, and we'd like to think that it's a reflection of us. But in reality, that's the way a lot of sellers look at their houses as well. So when you could go into an identical house to the one next door, and they could have, and the one next door could have sold at 200,000 a week ago, and that seller will tell you why theirs is more special. And
I mean, there's many reasons, attention to detail, hard work, why I couldn't be an agent, but not telling vendors they can just sod off and I told you so would be the number one reason when they come back to you all those months later after having gone with the higher price.
Christian says, the public don't care about our industry, just the value of their home or asset. It's harsh but true of many more professions than just ours. And I think to a greater extent, you know, we've become a bit of a talking shop, haven't we, as an industry? We do a lot of, and these conferences as well, we do a lot of kind of navel gazing, a lot of talking, and I think that's great because we never used to talk, we never used to share. But I think the one thing that we shouldn't overestimate or underestimate, whichever way you look at it, is actually how much the public give a damn about it. I think it's important to us. I don't necessarily think it's as important to them, and I think that Christian's right on there. Let's have a look. Our very own Terry Wogan. the Women in the Estate Agents group are so incredibly supportive. I think that's a lot of feedback that we've heard over the past couple of weeks as well.
Yeah.
Somebody had an urge to push you. I'm presuming that's over the balcony at the after party.
It was over the balcony. Thanks, Mum.
Conference did an amazing job to retain what they achieved in their first conference and was utterly brilliant. Graham Wilson talking about
he's quite woke, isn't he, Christian?
Oh, he's. I think he's. I don't. Do you think he's genuine?
No, I think there's a lot of false.
Do you think he's a real Viking?
That's why he hides behind the mask. Has anyone, Christian? Has anyone won the Valkyrie thing? I didn't go in for it, but I'll be a bit gutted if I didn't get it. To be honest, that was a nice.
I don't think you. I don't think you had the qualifying criteria for it. To be honest,
I didn't know there was another room. That was the problem.
Let's have a look at what else we've got here. I think is that all the. No, this was kind of interesting. I wanted to ask you about this, if you don't mind. One of the headlines that we saw this week was that the prop tech firm secures £10 million of strategic investment. So I'll just read out the opener. Property blockchain network Coadjute has secured £10 million of investment from Lloyds Banking Group, Nationwide, NatWest, and Rightmove.
Yeah,
this is the first time that three of the UK's largest mortgage providers have come together to fund a prop tech. And it's probably one of the first time that they've come together with another prop tech to fund another prop tech.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting, isn't it? So it's only, in my mind, I can only remember they bought this thing. Actually, they bought kind of a reviews platform themselves, haven't they, recently? Before that, they got outside, was it Outside View or Outside Edge or whatever else, Propensity Analytics, but I don't think that really ever went anywhere. Our old pal, obviously, Christian sold Van Milder into it on the tenant referencing side. But they've not been, and I never really understood. I mean, it seems mad to me why they didn't use, so much of those funds to really build up their own tech stack in the way that clearly Chesterman did at ZPG. And I wonder if they left that side of things alone because that was the area, and frankly, they didn't have to do it. I wonder if this is pressure from CoStar now and on the market that. I
think there is. I think there's obvious pressure for Rightmove and companies like that to now do something different and to maybe invest in tech that can add value, because I think in order to keep ramping up the prices, keep delivering value to their shareholders, they need to offer more to agents and I think also to members of the public ultimately. My question about the whole Coadjute story, and I'm really sort of tempted to caveat this really well so that it's not bad for business in any way, Simon, is that I think Coadjute, and I've had a demo and I've spoken to their guys, lovely people, clearly understand the challenges in the marketplace and are developing something that hopes to take the heavy lifting out of sharing of information within a chain and within a sale, and to get people communicating properly. But my question has always been, I go to something like the Estes and Coadjute were always sort of the headline sponsors, and they obviously spend a lot of money investing in advertising. But if you talk to agents on the street, I've never really seen a lot of people, because there was a sense that it wasn't yet ready. It was, it needed to be adopted by the conveyancers. It needed to be adopted by the banks. Now, that to me is what's significant about this story, that if the banks are actually funding and buying into it, is this an indication that mortgage lenders are now going to say, well, actually, if you're using the Coadjute system, it's smoother, we'll buy into it, so that's interesting to me, because I've never come across a multitude of people that are using. It's not like Rightmove where we know that most agents are on it, so that has been interesting.
And I think they've got it cracked when somebody has a wireless charging mat they got at a conference. I think we all know that's the reason why you pick a business. He's absolutely right there. Just imagine what that tech stack would have looked like if they had, rather than giving money back to shareholders, they'd gone out there and done an incubator. It would have been, on the one hand, it would have stopped this issue about integration, though, Christian. And I mean, that's as you know yourself, that's one of the big challenges of business there. But yeah, I think it would have been a markedly different one. And would it been? I don't know whether it would have been good for the industry as a whole going forwards, because you'd have to imagine the options there would have shrunk massively, wouldn't they, in terms of independent businesses?
And in answer to the question of what has Coadute done for me lately, I have a Coadute wireless charging mat that they gave me at the conference. So there you go.
Yeah. They understand once you get to that area, you realise that's all that you need to do.
I think what I take away from this is it's promising. I'd like to see it come to fruition. I'd like to see something out there that is a bit of a game changer when it comes. And that whole, let's not forget that the whole sort of buzzwords of blockchain, sort of from 5-6 years ago, are now completely been eclipsed by AI. So you used to get every article was all about blockchain being used in prop tech, and now it's all about AI. Let's not forget that the benefits of blockchain in terms of security, autonomy, and all of that sort of good stuff that it was promising, still not fully been realized by our industry.
Adam, the Tango Pig from OpenBricks, has been shouting about this for an eternity, hasn't he? I mean, that is just what he's got is very, very exciting. And I think obviously if you're looking at that, those different options out there, then the likes of this, and you're right, blockchain's been out there without really seemingly delivering, has it? But like QR codes, let's not face it, we're almost dead and buried.
They're back with a vengeance, baby.
And that's such a tiny, tiny little thing, isn't it? Compared to the whole, I think that it's almost the scale of what blockchain can do for you is something that people haven't got their head around. And famously, with difficult concepts, it can take a while to resonate, can't it?
But I think this comment here from Facebook user, who is clearly someone we know, but we need to tell us who you are. We are testing Coadute in pilot, and I am encouraged by what they are doing. It definitely needs the network effect. So that kind of echoes what I was saying before, that I think it's great tech, but I think in order for it to work, it needs buy-in from all the various...
I heard those exact words from a very well-known Northern...
Do you know who it is? It is none other...
Verona. And a very well-known Northern agent with dozens of offices said exactly that. Very exciting. And it's almost like, it needs to hit that critical mass before it. But if you don't get there, it's never going to get the chance, is it? And things like Mio and View My Chain, they're in that similar sort of space where it needs the community effect to happen. But then there's some really good stuff that's going to come off the back of it.
Christian says that because Coadute were prominent early in, before they were ready or operational, I think a lot of agents, if they're aware of them, aren't aware that it's now operational in that kind of beta phase.
I'll tell you what happens here, David. We see this week in, week out, don't we, where people think that they've heard the name enough, they think they know the business. And one of our biggest challenges when we're trying to introduce companies to agents is, I thought I knew that company, or I thought I knew what they did. Well, you might have known what they did 3 or 4 years ago, but what they are now is a very different creature. And if you think about how the likes of the Spriffs, the Spectres, these other businesses have changed their businesses as well, from being quite narrow to now very broad brushstroke prop tech businesses. I think it is beholden on agents to give a lot of these companies a second view. And let's say they jump on a little MOT with a certain David Mintz or Simon Whale. There's another shameless plug. I've done well with the
There is, but I mean, let that be the message to all prop techs out there. I think the more that you're open and communicate, and a lot can be said for, Street sort of went recently a little bit Steve Jobsy Apple, didn't they? In terms of the level of their launch was just so grand and magnificent. But and if anything, you could say, well, maybe they over communicate with the public, but maybe that's the way to go. Maybe in order for the public to get a sense of what you do, you need to sort of repeat it, but you also need to be very, very proud of it and give it some production value to get it out there.
Yeah. And few and far between there, isn't it? So if only there was a good video company working with a couple of industry talents that knew how to put these things together. But anyway, I think if you look at, what is it? Rightmove tend to get hundreds of people on, some of the other portals like the OTMs of the world. When those launches, they get them there. But normally, if you're looking at many of the other events, you're lucky if you get dozens. And to be honest, if we got a dozen, we'd probably open a bottle of champagne. But the Street launch, famously quoted in Property Industry, I had literally thousands of people had registered, hadn't they? So I thought So that's maybe something.
I think that goes into that kind of showmanship that we talk about, the build-up and the fact that they were sort of telling their database about it, but they were advertising it. They were sort of releasing certain snippets of it. But what was nice about the launch is that they clearly understand the value of sort of agent testimonials as well, because it featured a lot of the agent users on there as well. And I think that's possibly the best way to demonstrate to your public.
Look, let's be honest, Vincy. Suppliers saying stuff is one thing. Us saying things as an independent is another. But agents want to hear from other agents. That's the social proof, isn't it? Can I ask you the most important thing about that whole launch? Who's your favourite founder? Is it Heather or Tom?
Oh, right. I hope she's not listening, because I'm a great fan of Heather. I think she's an amazing person.
Oh, okay. Well,
however, I think Tom doesn't get the limelight that he deserves sometimes. He's quiet, he's understated, but he's there's a lot going on up there.
Very much Team Tom there. I mean, Heather is my neighbour, so I've got to be quite careful. She does quite often sit outside the house and just sit watching.
Can I just go back to women in estate agency for again? Yeah. I have to tell you that I've dealt with Heather on the business end of things in Spectre, in Hello Again, in Street, and I have always been wowed by her professionalism, how she deals with people, etc., etc. But there was just a new element to that when I sat and listened to her keynote speech at the Women in the Estate Agency conference. What she talked about in terms of company culture and recruitment, I saw an entirely different side. I've got to tell you,
this doesn't sound like it's reinforcing your point, but it genuinely is. As Christian Bible said, "Don't be the poo in the pool." That story that I thought was meandering like one of mine was, when she delivered on that, was absolutely fantastic.
It was great, because she was amazing, and the fact that she was willing to be very personal about it, because there's a propensity that everything that we do sometimes in terms of PR is polished. So when you get onto stage, some people are not self-deprecating. They don't use humor.
Well, there's a lack of realism, isn't it? You put all this stuff out, like, these quotes on the walls, our clients come first, and then actual experience with the people there comes for anything but. Whereas that business still absolutely resonates from start to finish from those values that Tom and the second founder, Heather, have in the business as well.
Second founder.
Didn't you like the moment when I obviously went to ask her a question and she just said no?
No, somebody else. But she was superb. And then, if I can just touch on again her tribute to Sarah Edmondson at the end, where she herself shared her own story. To me, it was a perfect segment. It was very, very moving, but I took a lot away from what Heather said that day.
Well, Heather, like me, I kept my illness very quiet, and nobody really knew. And still today, I don't think there's people out there that knew I was ill. Whereas Heather has actually, as obviously she hadn't spoke about it, and I think it's so, it's overused. That is so brave, but it was absolute to be that vulnerable, but then to talk about it. About how it had affected her, and obviously her friendship with Sarah was just perfect.
Before we go and say goodbye to people, I think Graham Wilson's right.
Yeah,
do it for Dom. 2024. Put it in your diaries, in your calendars. Most of the people who've commented on today have already on and signed up. I've seen you all. 20th of June, 2024. Please search Do It For Dom and join the Facebook and LinkedIn groups. Click here for the event link. It's all there. And please sign up today. It's relatively inexpensive. It is the best networking day out that you get. You don't need to prep or prepare. You don't need to worry about what you wear. And you don't. It's just a great day.
And I believe your anchoring is the phrase, the entertainment in the evening. Secondly, do make sure you go via that link, because otherwise Kerfuffle doesn't get its 20% from the charity. So that's quite important. And I believe hold up the first auction prize we've got there, the Suzanna Mavity doll.
The Suzanna Mavity doll. Now, this version of it doesn't yet have batteries in it, but when it does, let me just tell you, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh God, it will go on even longer.
Well, there's just one thing: it never stops. You can't switch it off. It has no off button. Susanna wasn't able to join us today because I think she's got a bit of an eye issue, isn't she?
Yeah, that's a warning to any other speakers that dare not come on our show. You will be taken to the cleaners.
Yeah, anyone that lets us down on this show, we will have a public character.
Yeah, and by the way, women in estate agent, I didn't say taken to the cleaners because it was a dig at you lot. That was a generic term. See what I do? Right.
I think that's the end of this show and possibly this company.
Yeah, we're doing this. Are we the longest running show? We must be one of the.
You know what? That bears comment as well. We know that you only need to open up your property industry eye every morning to find out that yet another podcast has been launched within our industry. If you haven't got a podcast, what are you waiting for? Just open one today. It's fantastic. We're one of the originals. We're one of the first, and I think the only other people who were out there possibly before us was Stephen Brown, Luke Sinclair, and what's his face?
Yeah, where are those mofos?
Exactly. Who says, "Oh, I'm waiting for another episode of the estate agent podcast." It doesn't happen. But there's a lot of great content out there, and all I'm going to say to us all is let's make sure that we're taking as much action as we are talking about great ideas and great stuff. Let's hope that we're implementing it. Let's not get drunk on our own kind of self-publicity enabled.
Is this one of those comments that you're just saying stuff for me to listen to? All right. Well,
all I'm saying is that I think there's some great stuff going on, but we need to make sure that we're not just talking the talk, that we're walking the walk.
Walk the walk, and I'm going to walk the walk to Old Trafford today, and let's see the magic happen. Thanks,
Graham Wilson. It's 25 quid pre-booking only. Thank you.
And he'll stop in a lay-by. Cheers, all.
Take